Hello everybody and welcome to this week's video. You join us from many thousands of feet up in the air. We're sat on board an easyJet A320 today and we are heading to Santorini. We'll rewind a little bit now so you can find out what it was like before we got on board. Enjoy the video. My trip actually started the night before, as the flight was an early departure from Gatwick. We spent the night in the airport premiering, for which we only paid £35. And I'd highly recommend that you do that for an early morning flight. Anyway, the next morning we were up bright and early at the North Terminal, which remains the only terminal that's open here in September 2020. I last flew easyJet just after the lockdown was lifted, catching their A320neo to Belfast, and things have changed a little bit since then, with the airport experience certainly a little bit more relaxed. I won't draw comparisons in this video, but do make sure you check out that full trip report so you can compare for yourself. I was really encouraged to see the security area busy again as people become more confident to fly. Having said that, not everybody was taking heed of the distancing markers on the floor. As always, it's important to keep sanitising your hands with what smells like sambuca. Just look how busy today's departure board is, a full 2 columns of flights. I know I said that I wouldn't compare this video to the one that I took back in July, but when you have 2 days worth of flights on the same departure board, you kinda have to. Most of the shops are now open, although it does feel a little bit quieter now everyone is spread out. A few eateries have reopened too, and a top tip, don't go to Pret. It was awful. Go to the Pure, which is just opposite and much cheaper. Better choice and less busy. Spoons is also open for that 7 AM pint, but I decided against that one today. Boarding was called very early, so we headed to the gate. Here's our A320 for today's flight. The boarding area was fairly quiet, and when we arrived, speedy boarding had already started. This was followed by rows 20 to 31 to fill up from the back of the cabin, before eventually rows 11 and above were called, which included us. The ground crew here were really strict on that one item of hand baggage rule for the flight today. We made our way onto the jet bridge and on board today's aircraft. I'm pleased to report that the seat area and pocket were clean and free from any rubbish, unlike my previous easyJet flight. Pushback was slightly early and we taxied out to runway 26 left at Gatwick.
Mr. Richards, Captain Jinka, Andre, Shane and Marta. So about ready to go now, should get away pretty much ahead of schedule, as it's not so busy at the moment, so just a very short taxi out, pointing out towards the west originally, and then left turn out over the channel. It takes us down into northern France, across Paris, and then be turning left essentially, reaching down over the Alps, over Austria, and down the Adriatic coast, past Split, Dubrovnik, and then over top of Athens, and then on to Santorini. Flight time about 3 hours 40. Weather-wise, clear skies really all the way. Weather down there, it's a lovely day down there. It's probably going to be about 28 to 30 degrees. Light breeze from the north, so do make yourself comfortable. Enjoy the flight. Thank you.
It's a powerful takeoff today as we climb out before setting course for Santorini. Today's flight wasn't full, so after takeoff our aisle seat companion moved to an empty row further up the aircraft. We're in row 8 and unsurprisingly the rows forward of us were empty. This is because they're the most expensive seats to book on an easyJet flight. As you can see, it's $23.99 for rows 2 to 6. Now, although these seats allow you to bring an extra cabin bag on board, most people overlook that fact and just choose to sit in the $7.99 or $4.99 seats like us. There isn't anything overly fancy about today's seats other than the in-flight magazine now comes as a QR code that you must download before the flight. Each seat also comes with somewhere to hang your watermelon. These Recaro seats are slightly different to the ones you'll find on the Neo aircraft. On the standard A320 you'll find this fabric seat cover, whereas on the newer Neos you get a leather cover. Each seat also has a small tray table, and as is standard on pretty much all short-haul flights, everyone gets a reading light, call bell and an air vent. Overall, the seat area was clean and tidy, with a fairly comfortable seat for a 4-hour flight. As we crossed over the channel, something that I never knew. There are white cliffs not just in Dover, but also on the North Normandy coast too. The crew came around with a bistro, drinks and snack service around 45 minutes after takeoff. In total, they brought the trolley around I think around 3 times during the flight. They also offered onboard shopping, but with no in-flight magazine, I expected the take-up there was fairly limited. Cruised uneventfully over Northern Europe before crossing the Alps over Innsbruck and working our way down the Adriatic coast overhead Croatia. Here's our engine eating Dubrovnik before we flew over Dubrovnik Airport. Halfway through the flight then, and let's go and check out the front lavatory. Only one person was allowed to queue at once, so I checked out the galley whilst I was waiting. It was cleaner than what I'd expected it to be for this stage of the flight. Looking at all the orange in here though, I wonder how much easyJet paid for that special colour. Making my way back to my seat, and I'm going to pause the video just here. This is a flight to Santorini, the most coupley flight I have ever been on. Just look at the rows of empty aisle seats as you walk down the aisle. I'm lucky enough to have this plus one with me today, even if she steals the window seat. "30 minutes or so out of Santorini now, and we flew overhead Athens, somewhere that I've never been to but certainly would like to. I had no idea Athens had so many airports. There's several runways to the north and west of the city, and here's the old airport along the coast. The approach to Santorini today takes us towards the east of Thira, over the island and then out into the sea, before banking right to land on the island. On the approach now, and it's probably best that I give you a short history lesson. Santorini exists as it does today thanks to an incredibly explosive volcanic eruption many years ago. The island is in a crescent shape reflective of the crater caused by that explosion. These factors mean that the island is effectively a crescent-shaped wedge sat in the Aegean Sea, with sheer cliffs along the western coast and in parts of the outer crescent slopes down to the sea. Its small size means there's relatively little space to build a runway, which needs over a mile of flat and stable ground.
disarm doors for arrival, thank you.
I think that's one of the hardest landings that I've ever had. The throttles didn't even idle. Anyway, welcome to the wonderful island of Santorini. Alighting was supposed to be by seat row number, but of course everyone was eager to start their holidays. I think all the gates here are accessed via bus, of which there were plenty on the ground to avoid overcrowding. Goodbye Whiskey Lima, thank you for a lovely flight. So there we are, welcome to Santorini. Thank you very much for watching and we will see you next time.